Hello, Chris here again. Back with a couple of videos giving you some tips for online teaching. And in this first video, I'm going to show you how you can utilize the Zoom platform for online teaching, how to start your courses, and how to engage students online. Okay, so let's get started. I'm going to bring up a PowerPoint, so bear with me, please. Okay. Okay, so as I say, this video we're going to look at some general tips for online teaching in a virtual classroom. A virtual classroom is known as synchronous learning. That is to say, the teacher and the students are online at the same time. And the key to pulling off a successful virtual lesson is to prepare thoroughly, carefully considering how you'll deliver the content, and of course to practice. Okay, so here are some tips for making your virtual lessons successful. Okay, so first of all, let's look at a few technical aspects of teaching online. Starting with lighting. Okay, pay attention to your background. Too much light behind you and you'll appear as a dark figure, as you can see on the left. Also, don't have anything behind you that could be distracting to those watching you, i.e. your students. And so instead of that backlighting, make sure you have a good source of light in front of you, and indeed behind the camera that you're using with the computer. And then you'll look much better, as in the picture on the right. Okay, equally important is your audio. Okay, if possible, use an external microphone. The audio quality will be much better than the computer's inbuilt microphone. Also, pay attention to your clothes, your attire. They should be professional enough for a teacher, and also try and avoid wearing stripes or too bright colors. Solid colors are the best. Okay, moving on to movement, in fact. Okay, so again, try and avoid too much sort of excessive movement, moving your head, excessive hand gestures, etc. Video via Zoom is a bit different from television. Too much movement can cause the video to pixelate and degrade. Okay, so try and minimize that. Okay. Now, of course, you'll be using the internet for online teaching, and as we know, sometimes the internet can be somewhat unstable. If your video fails due to bandwidth issues, hopefully that will sort itself out in a short space of time. But in the meantime, utilize the chat function that exists in Zoom. And here we see a screenshot of Zoom with the chat function circled. Here, just hover over the screen and that bottom taskbar comes up. Okay. Now, your lesson plan. Of course, you will have planned your lesson, but just as in a real classroom, you should have your lesson plan with you because you will need to refer to it during your lesson. Okay? And that's quite okay. However, a couple of ways of doing this. If possible, have a printout of your lesson plan, or have it open on a second monitor, or perhaps a second device or computer. The problem if you have it open on your main monitor is that you'll need to keep switching back and forth between that and the Zoom platform every time you need to refer to it. And if you're sharing your screen, you won't be able to bring up your lesson plan without the students seeing it. Okay, so much better to have it in a separate place, as it were. As I said, on a second monitor or second computer, or have a printout of it with you. Okay, so that's really what I want to say on the technical aspect of it. Let's have a look at introductions. Okay, student names. Of course, if you're teaching online, then you could be teaching anywhere in the world. For the purposes of your teaching practice for this course, you'll be teaching Thai students. Now, the thing about Thai students is that most Thai students will use their nicknames. Okay, their nicknames are generally shorter and easier than their real names. Okay, perhaps here's an example of a real first name. And every Thai person has a nickname which they use quite freely. And so if any of your students have used their real names on their screens, ask them to change it to their nicknames. They certainly won't mind doing that, and it will be much easier for you. There's an example of a typical nickname. Short, one syllable, easy to pronounce. Okay, now, moving on to icebreakers. Now, the purpose of an icebreaker is for the students to get to know each other. And of course, for you to get to know a bit about them. And so this typically takes place at the beginning of a new course. And so whenever you have a new course, it's good to do an icebreaker. Now, unfortunately, most icebreakers that I've seen for Zoom and other video conference platforms, while they're fun, they don't really achieve this. Okay, in that it will have the students having, doing some kind of fun activity, but not really getting to know each other, or at least a bit about each other. Now, one that I found that does achieve this and helps the students to identify each other as well is called Where in the World Is. Okay, so I'm just going to play this short video about that.
How you play is very simple. On most video conferencing softwares, if you hit the gallery view, you can see everybody's screen side by side. For example, if you have 9 people, you're going to have 3 rows of 3 people. And what happens is on my screen, I would see Sean, Byron, Emily, and then so on and so forth. But if I'm Emily, I might see Billy, Katie, Byron. It's all in different order. And so this is a really fun game that emphasizes where are they on your screen. So in order to play, you would start off by saying, we're going to play a game called Where in the World Is. What happens is the first person goes, and I would say, where in the world is Emily? And everyone on their screen would use their finger and point either up, down, left, or right, or at an angle, and point to where Emily is on their video screen. So I would point up. Then Emily would smile, she would laugh, she would wave, and what she would do is she then gets to pass it on to somebody else. She would say, where in the world is Katie? She would point up, down, left, right, everybody's pointing at wherever Katie is on their video screen. So it's, again, really fun, really simple, and it's a great way just to have fun with the scenario that you're in, which is on a video conference call, which can sometimes be awkward. So let's make it fun.
Okay, great. Thanks for that, Sean. So there's a good idea for an icebreaker that can be played on a video conference platform such as Zoom. Okay, so your lesson's underway, and it's very important. It's important generally to keep the students engaged, but particularly so when you're teaching online. Okay, so the first thing I'd like to say about this is when you're teaching online, make sure students keep their videos on, okay, so that you can monitor and you can check for engagement. And if you want to know who is speaking, check for the green outline around the individual video window. Okay, so in this example picture here, we can see that the student who's currently speaking is top row, second from the left. Students can indeed mute their microphones, but they'll need to turn them on each time they want to say something. Okay. Alternatively, of course, they can all keep their microphones unmuted, but that then means that you'll need to tell them to avoid sort of making any kind of background noises, or they'll be picked up by their microphone. Okay, and whenever possible, nominate students to answer questions. Although indeed, you can ask the same question to 3 or 4 students. If you ask a question just as an open group, you may well get you know, a number of students talking at the same time. So you'll need to control that. Okay? And just as a general point, engage students often and make sure that everybody is included. Okay? So those are some general tips for teaching online. Stay tuned for the second part, the second video on this, in which I'll actually compare various aspects of teaching. I'll compare how they would be conducted in a real classroom versus how they'd be conducted in a virtual classroom. So stay tuned for that. Bye for now.